on November 8th, 2021 at the Coolidge Professional Development Room at 6 o'clock. May I have a roll call, please?
Audrey Adamson.
Here.
Justin Anderson.
Present.
Chet DeSmet.
Here.
Kate Schaefer.
Here.
Maria S. Trigueros.
Here.
Andrew Wayert.
Here.
Aaron Waldron Smith.
Here.
She said here, but it's not showing up.
You heard here.
I heard here.
Okay,
Is she here?
she is here.
All right. All right, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. So it's a motion that the Board of Education approve the committee of the whole meeting, minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of October 11th.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Okay. And we will move on to advanced learning program development, Dr. Lane and Dr. Dibble.
Good evening. Sorry, I gotta take my mask off.
I'm excited tonight because we're going to talk about advanced learning programs, and I'm going to start off with elementary, and then Dr. Devane is going to follow me.
So we start off talking about what we're doing to serve all students. They are our youngest learners. That's where we grow and develop, that where they grow and develop, and how we're serving all of them. So that's what we want to talk about. Our tier one. When we talk about tier one, we look at this chart here, which is really kind of summarizes what we focus on. We talked about when we talk about our tiered level of support. So in the past, when you look at the remediation side, that was a heavy focus of our tiered support system. When we talk about tier one, we're talking about 80% of our students. Tier two is smaller group, and then tier three is usually intense single interventions. So this is what we focus on at our elementary and across the district now. And you notice it has the advanced academics and the remediation side to it. And from an elementary standpoint, what we really worked on is that tier one. If you look at this, this is a sample of what we initiated this year for our elementary system-wide guidance. These are just a couple sample slides. And I want you to look over on the far right. If you look over there, you'll see a core plus more. That is something that is brand new this year. And that is 30 minutes. And you're going to hear more about it shortly, about what we do during that time. But what's nice about from a system-wide guidance for our 10 elementaries, we really try to develop a consistent tier one approach. And what that looks like inside our two primary core subjects for math and ELA are we really started to look at how we do our lessons and how we can be better leverage strong instructional practices such as small group instruction for both math and ELA. And this is just an example of what we've put out across for our elementary teachers to help them be more unified in our tier one approach. Now, this is what it looks like when it's running in small group. And you can see here, we have just some examples from our buildings. That does not happen just by mistake. It's very intentional. It takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of dissection of the data so we can meet kids at our students at their levels. And when we talk about advanced learning, you know, and as I talk here about tier one, this is all of our elementary students in the district, right? And you're probably asking, how can a building, any one of these 10, actually 11 buildings with Jefferson up there, get down to focusing on what each individual kid needs? And we're gonna learn about this tonight, and this is what it looks like. We're gonna take a building tonight, Hamilton. And if you look at all 600 students on this picture, from a district or from a building standpoint, how they break it down, and remember the data diamond, the tiered support triangle that we looked at, this is all their students. If you look at the top, we talk about advanced learning, we're really looking at that blue section. And you can see how Hamilton has taken those students and they've identified them. And they're going to talk a little bit more how we're meeting the needs of those students. So I'm going to have Lisa Mitchell come up and Lindsay Oswald.
Well, this
I'm a little
like.
bit taller.
So like Brian said, this is our new data wall, our visual data wall that we started using this year. And we based it on the diamond, which we started using last year to make sure that we can look at all kids. Before, the triangle had all these grouped in one section. So we still have our tier 1, our tier 2, but our tier 3 is broken down into 3, or other way around, tier 3 to tier 2. Tier 1's broken down into 3 sections so that we can really look at the slightly above average and then the above average and make sure we're also doing differentiation or enrichment activities for those students as well. So, and we use this to help form our Core Plus More groups this year because it just helped us based on their MAP scores, and we use it as one piece of data to place them in our 4 different groups. Each of these squares up here represents a student at Hamilton. It just has their initials on it, and then the teachers identifying information. And so it's placed where they fell for their percentile in the MAP score in the fall, just reading. So we will revisit this in January after our next MAP scores and at our school-wide data review. And we're hopeful, and we're working really hard, that we are going to see these reds move into the yellows move to green, and so on. We want them to, our goal is for them to move to the right so that 80% of our kids will fall in this section. So we're working really hard on that. That's right.
No. So yeah, what you can't see is that if you go back, it is by classroom, and like she said, it's by initial. It is in a building, it's in it's in our staff professional development room. But we wanted like the privacy of students to be there, but at the same time, we wanted a visual, and we're gonna leave them the color that they are to start the year, so we can see those red kids hopefully be in the yellow section. So we're just really excited to have a visual and to see how far, we knew that there was gonna be more kids in the red this year, starting the year. And so we're just excited to see the visual of those kids moving over.
Okay, now we're going to talk, Allison Olson, who's a 2nd grade teacher at Hamilton, is going to talk a little bit about Core Plus More time that I just mentioned moments ago and what she's doing, particularly to meet the needs of all students, but also some of her advanced learners.
Yes. Okay, so as they said before, we used map data, teacher input to create 4 different sections of kids. And we're lucky at Hamilton, we do have 4 sections. So we have a group of kids that go to an intervention. We have kids that are like in a bubble room that we're trying to kind of get over that hump. We've got a group of average achieving students, and we're lucky enough in 2nd grade to have 2 high achieving classrooms. So I'm going to kind of talk about that. I have the high achieving students, and it's kind of fun because you have kids that all at the same level, and we're doing things with them that we wouldn't normally get to do on a normal school year. So we started the year doing some more project-based learning. We started doing a unit running for town mayor. So we actually had Sangeeta come in and answer questions the kids had come up with, and just kind of to know what she does on a daily basis, how she was elected. And then they could take that and they created a persuasive essay on why they would be a good town mayor, or a mayor of Hamilton, we would call it. So that was really fun. We've also kind of took one of the units we worked on in our MyView curriculum and just kind of pushed it a little further. We had them create a billboard on their favorite place in the Quad Cities. And then now we have moved on to a passion project. So the students get a choice of what they would like to research more about. And they come up with like a driving question to help them conduct their research. And then they get to choose a way to showcase it, whether that's technology or a model or a poster, really however they feel most comfortable sharing it out. So that is what we are doing to meet the needs of the high group. But right now we're targeting all students at all levels during that time. So it's kind of all hands on deck for that 30 minutes.
So now Mr. Ryerson is going to talk about specifically enrichment and how we are building our capacity.
So when we talk about enrichment and our advanced learners, one of the things that we're doing is we're building the capacity of our classroom teachers. And so this year we started a new cohort of teachers that are taking a college level course through St. Francis University in Joliet. It's an online course. We have 16 teachers that are part of this online course that specifically addresses what are instructional methods and strategies that you can use in your classroom in a tier 1 setting for your high advanced learners. And so building those teachers' capacity through this course, what we're looking to do then is use the train the trainer model so that our teachers who are in this cohort are able to go back to their schools and train other staff on those instructional practices that they can use on an everyday level to help meet the needs of our advanced learners. This cohort will also serve on a talent development and enrichment committee that's going to meet a few times each year to help form a vision for our district moving forward. How do we identify our students? We use a triangulation of data to identify students at that enrichment level. We do map data 3 times a year for all students. We use a nonverbal assessment called the NNAT3. It's a nonverbal general ability assessment, and that's given to 3rd graders in the fall. We look at that data to help in conjunction with our map data and our local district assessments, our Fontes and Pinnell classroom assessments, to really get a good picture of where those students are, where they fall in those national percentiles.
And here is an example, just a snapshot of some of the instructional strategies we're using right now. But I want to show you, because this board approves a lot of money we spend on our digital resources that we use to help support our lead Moline. And if you look at the graph on the left here, this is first quarter results for 1 elementary. And what I want you to look at specifically is that red, where we started at 40% to, we had a majority of students 2 and 1 grade level below, and we were able to reduce that by 9% in roughly a quarter. And this is just one program that we get data from, that our teachers can use. And remember the picture of the small group instruction I was showing you? This program helps support our teachers so they can pull data as kids use those programs to make instructional decisions for those kids. So again, this is just some of the resources we use for that. Now, we want to talk about our advanced learning plans. And we've got an example of Lindsay from Hamilton. They're going to get into the weeds a little bit about a specific plan for you so you guys can understand the details of what goes into our advanced learning plans. And let's preface this. This is our 1 to 2% in the blue are our students who, as we navigate the supports through our intervention, this is students who we feel from our problem solving team, we need to meet their needs by doing something more. And that's what our advanced learning plans are about. So you want to talk about?
Yeah, can I introduce them real quick? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
We'll bring everybody up. Let's
Okay.
bring everybody up. Yeah.
So we have Darren and Nick Cassini. They are Enzo's parents and they were part of the committee or the team last year. We piloted ALPs for the district last year, us and one other school. We had 2 students on an ALP last year. And so Enzo is here tonight. I told him to be prepared in case you guys have tough questions. He brought a couple of books for light reading. If And so this is his parents, Darren and Nick. Our instructional coach, Lisa Mitchell, was on this group as well. In this group as well, Crystal Gaston was one of his teachers last year. Our counselor, Sarah Teague, was part of this. And also our music teacher, Megan Cullis, was part of this. So they're all here tonight. So we're here for the party. So we were part of the advanced learning plan. Enzo was identified because of the assessments that Mr. Ryerson talked about. He always came up significantly higher than his peers, 99th percentile on multiple assessments, things like that. So the way that we started the process is we sent home we identified him in our problem solving meeting. We sent home a parent survey for Nick and Darren to fill out. Here's just an example of a couple of questions. We wanted to know strengths and challenges that Enzo has. We also gave it to his teacher to fill out. You'll notice that there is some social and emotional strengths and challenge questions as well. And then Enzo also got to take the survey and he got to talk about what strengths and challenges he has, what hobbies he has outside of school. And also he really focused on those social emotional needs as well, those skills. Enzo was very honest with his answers. He gave us some really good feedback on things that he needed to work on and some strengths of his, so it was fun to see that. And then after we got all of that information, we sat together as a team and we made a plan for him. And so these are the SMART goals that we came up with, and I'll let each person on the committee kind of talk about their goal. Do you want to talk about math, Crystal? I think you kind of led that one.
Sure.
Enzo works through the ALEX program, which is correlated with my math curriculum that we have through McGraw-Hill. And he worked on the 6th grade, where it just kind of takes him through the 6th grade standards and he progresses through them. And if he had any trouble, he could contact me and we could work through the issues, answer any questions. Enzo didn't have any problems working through it on his own. I think he contacted me maybe once. But he worked right through it. I could give him his percentage, tell him how he's doing, give him feedback through the data that I get from Alex, and he was good to go.
So Enzo was a 5th grader last year. He was doing 6th grade math. He had actually accelerated to grade 2 when he was in kindergarten. He went to 2nd grade, so he was a couple grade levels above what he was supposed to be doing. And then his goal was to master all of those 6th grade skills. So now this year, when he's in middle school, he's a 6th grader, but he's in accelerated 7th grade math. So he is accelerated on. So him and one other peer from Hamilton that was in a similar situation are not doing accelerated 6th grade math at John Deere. They're doing accelerated 7th grade math. All right, SEL and writing. So I think Sarah and
Yeah, one of the things that Enzo identified, or his parents, as our team, we identified Enzo wanted to work on point of view, accepting feedback and kind of take perspective taking from other people. And so Enzo and I identified some things we needed to work on. We took a pre and a post test and he grew. On the pre-test, he got 6 out of 10, the post-test, he got 10 out of 10. So we met weekly to just specifically address perspective taking, empathy, some things like that. We also had a goal, Enzo identified that he's often feeling stressed about things. And so our goal was that he could name 5 coping skills that actually work for him. One of the things that I found really insightful is Enzo is a very talented musician. And so one of the things that he had previously said was stress reducing for him was listening to a song and kind of trying to figure out the melody. Well, then when we dug into it a little bit, he found out that was actually more stress in producing, but composing was stress reducing. And so it was really interesting that, it was fun. We worked with Miss Coley on that to kind of, I relied on her expertise, what notes they were and things. So we just had a lot of fun digging into what are the things that actually helps Enzo reduce his stress and what are the things that maybe when he's more stressed, he needs to just be careful about.
To piggyback off of her, we would email back and forth because we were at one point remote, and Enzo was very clear in what he wanted to do. And then I noticed during recess, he was drawing pictures and I was like, wow, that's really cool. And so I said, how could we incorporate this, but connect it also to music and technology? And so he found this site where he could take a picture of his drawing and upload it, and then it comes up with its own music. It's really neat. And then he kind of edited it, and he didn't like how it sounded, so he flipped it upside down. And do you remember that? Yeah. So yeah, very insightful. He wanted to incorporate technology and music together.
One other thing we did that I thought was really cool that kind of fit with the taking other people's views and empathy is that Enzo also mentored a younger student at Hamilton. So he volunteered to give up a little bit of he took his recess time and these 2 students would code together. So it was really cool to see them working together in both an interest level. So the other student had some advanced coding skills. Enzo was beyond where he was. So Enzo was able to practice mentoring. He was a 5th grader then, so he mentored a 2nd grader on coding skills.
I know that 2nd grader is going to be a 3rd grader, and we have a couple 2nd graders that we're doing ALPs for now. And that's also one thing they're interested in. So now the 3rd grader is going to have the opportunity to now be the mentor. So he's excited to be on the other side. So Enzo has trained him well. He's ready for it. So this is just the instructional strategy that we talked about. Again, it was a whole team approach. We were all hands, on deck. And so Mrs. Mitchell and Mrs. Gascoigne were overseeing the ALEX program. Ms. Gascoigne was working with them on the Code Combat, which is similar to the program to talk about. Do you want to add anything to the Code Combat program? Or?
He was just very specific. He told me he already knew how to do scratch coding and he wanted to learn JavaScript. So we had to find something that we could teach him JavaScript with. And so Code Combat ended up being a great program for him to use.
And then Miss Coley was, no, you're good. Miss Coley was working with him on piano, GarageBand, and combining technology and music. I know she touched on that. Do you have anything else to add?
No, we just explored lots of different options for him.
And then again, there was a mix of people, the teacher and the counselor working on point of view and stress management. Karen and Nick, you want to chat a little bit about your feedback as parents?
I mean, we really liked the process because it wasn't just, here's his score, let's increase his score, right? It was looking at the whole picture for Enzo, and really at this point in time, you know, we're looking ahead for him to make the transition to middle school already a year younger than everyone else. You know, how do we know he's in the right place? And, you know, as we went through the process, I think the thing that jumped out to me right away was the heavy focus on the social emotional, which really made us feel a lot more comfortable about him entering John Deere a year younger than all of his peers. And focusing on those areas that could have been problematic, the stress, the understanding the way others think, working through those really made us feel better that he was getting what he needed to be in this advanced level, to be where he's going to be a year younger. And then, you know, with the math piece of it, we knew that he was growing in math and that there was a potential to accelerate again, but having the ability for him to do that semi-independent learning and have a measurable there that we saw, yes, this is something, we're not going to be pushing him too hard because we didn't want him to go in and be overwhelmed in that situation, right? If it was on the border, we weren't quite sure, but the numbers showed that it made sense. So that it really helped that whole transition. And the fact that he got to chime in, the fact that he felt like he was part of the team, it wasn't just, here are the things you're going to do, I think really helped him out a lot.
Enzo, do you have anything to add? No?
I just want to say, Ron, thank you for coming tonight. And this all happened during a pandemic when we were struggling. And this team of educators, just for pulling this together and piloting this ALP process, I just want to say thank you. Thank you.
I guess I do have one small thing to add. I thought the communication between parents and the school was also amazing, because it's really hard to know what your kid's doing, and then especially if they're doing different things than other students. So it was really good that they kept us informed, and we felt like we were part of the process as well.
Yeah, we met 3 times a year, and then that last meeting in the spring, we met 3 times a year as a team. I mean, to like update goals, talk about progress monitoring. You know, we obviously met with Enzo a lot more, but we brought the John Deere team, a couple of people from John Deere to the last meeting so they could help with that transition and what middle school looked like. So that was nice because they had a lot of questions going in, and especially with him accelerating, you know, in graded math and things like that. So it was nice to get the scheduling questions out of the way and things like that. So that was nice.
Thank you. Gonna just finish up quick before we hand it on to Dr. DeBane. So when you look at where we've been with enrichment and advanced learning, this slide kind of sums it up. Our past, we traditionally just used a single screener, actually as early as kindergarten. We had a self-contained program that took kids out of their home school. We had very limited teacher capacity, and we really didn't have an SEL focus or student interest focus. We were focused on grades, honestly. Right now, we're using multiple data, multiple screeners. We really are focusing on the individual student at the elementary, giving them what they need, especially coming out of this pandemic. We know math is behind. And we're really working on building that capacity with our small group instruction. We're aligning our expectations. We're unifying our digital learning platforms to make it easier for our teachers to use data to reach kids and to differentiate inside classrooms. That's a key piece. And we've got the gifted cohort where we're trying to build our teacher capacity. And we hope this is our first run at this. We're going to continue it. So far, we're getting great input early on. The Core Plus More time is 30 minutes of time to focus on what kids need. We've never had that, and we've got that now. And we're using data. And honestly, we have 10 elementaries, and those 10 elementaries, you heard from our largest one tonight, and they've got over 600 kids, and we've got 185 at Willard. We've got a lot of variety. So that Core Plus More time, when you heard Mrs. Olson talk about it in Hamilton, they're able to do a whole group four section approach. But at Willard, it looks different. At Bicentennial, it looks a little bit different, but we're navigating that. And the mission for that Core Plus More time is giving all kids what they need, trying to enrich and help kids that are behind. And as we look to the future, I don't want to forget the SEL data focus because that is huge. We've invested heavily in that data, and we're using that data to meet our kids' needs. But in the future, we just want to keep expanding and continue what we're doing right now to reach all kids. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bain.
So for the secondary level, I want to talk a little bit about the journey that we've taken and some of the enhancements that we've done. It really started in the spring of 2020. In the second semester before the pandemic hit, we convened a group of our secondary administrators, along with our district team, to be able to end up looking and saying, okay, let's look at the data, let's look at what we currently have, let's look at where we want to end up going, and how do we increase access for all students to be able to end up getting advanced courses to provide. What would that look like? Of course, that was right before a pandemic, a global pandemic hit, but we were able to circle back to it. And the really nice part is this work then correlated also with a board goal for the 2020-21 school year. So we felt like we already had the momentum going, and then we had the power of a board goal with us. And so we came back in the fall of 2020, and we ended up saying, okay, let's get back to the data. Let's get back to student requests, student interests, and then let's look at like, what does this mean, grades 6 through 12, for the number of sections that we can offer of advanced courses. And so we looked at students and students who could make it, and we were able to say at both middle schools and at the high school, you could add sections at virtually every area. So one thing with secondary schedules compared to an elementary is you have these single classes. So just to throw a class in there, it's like a taut string. If you tug one side, you're going to feel it on the other side. So we ran a scheduling simulation to see if we increased the opportunities of more advanced courses, what would that do to our schedule? And what happened was across the board, we were able to end up meeting that. So we developed plans for implementing additional sections, and we're still working on how we can end up increasing more. So another piece of work that came out of there for the middle schools, and it was nice that we did this together. I have Mr. Chris Moore from the high school here to help too. And he's been on the process with us since before the pandemic, has been to talk about the transition. We talk about the transition from the elementary to the middle school, how to support that, from the middle school to the high school. And one thing from the middle school to high school that was the transition that we needed was to make sure that we had a similar language that didn't cause any confusion. So if you're going from advanced courses here to here, it felt like you knew exactly what it was. Because if you have different titles for things, like I thought that was this, or I thought that was the other thing. So we did that to align to our honors courses. So now we call advanced courses at the middle school honors courses. We also looked at, if we're going to increase sections, we're also looking at how we can do more of inclusive admittance practice. So what we did was a lot of the factors before for getting in had pieces to it that I think an example would be like citizenship or something like that. We said, what are all these pieces that are irrelevant to a student being able to do the work? And so once we did that, we eliminated a lot of barriers for a lot of students. We got more students who are going to end up being able to access it. Now, behaviors are important towards academic success, but what we chose to do is say we value the academic potential for completing these courses before these behavioral pieces. So we made the application process, or the process for looking at students, easier. So we still utilize map data, we still utilize classroom data, teacher perception. We're just utilizing it differently. So we've added additional sections in 6th grade, so that's the core, and we're going to be phasing those in. John Deere is our exception, where the English and social studies are dual language courses because of the number of sections we can offer, and then those will just continue to increase. We also have problem-solving teams. The elementary has this, the high school has this, and they had mentioned that they went through problem-solving teams for what they did here. We're doing the same thing with our students, and in particular, where you saw that diamond of remediation versus trying to enhance their experience, enrichment, that we're coming back to problem-solving team and targeting students who might be struggling in advanced courses, and then coming back to end up coaching them and talking about how we can get them through advanced courses as well. And I can honestly tell you that in visiting one of the middle schools last week, I sat in with one of these where they followed up with a student who was struggling. And the comment was, I believe in you. Why are you struggling right now? And the kid just said, I just haven't been doing my homework. All right, let's talk about how we can get to that. And kids are successful about that. We also have 21st century grant enrichment opportunities, so you can go further. We also have the 21st century grant at the high school. We're talking about how we can do enrichment opportunities for that as well. At the high school, we have added in a significant increase to the number of AP courses, dual credit opportunities that would be transfer credit bearing, and CTE articulated credit, and I'll go into a little bit of what that means. So the question then becomes, okay, so what's the process for getting into these different courses? And it varies on the course. Some courses have a prerequisite. Some they look at like a previous success, because there is knowledge that scaffolds to get into advanced courses for some of these. Blackout College requires a student to take the AccuPlacer if you're going to end up getting into dual credit. And we help students through that. But in particular, when available, we go for student interest. And if it's available where you don't require an AccuPlacer or you don't require a prerequisite, if the student wants to go for it, we say go for it. An example of this would be AP Psychology.
That's by teacher recommendation.
Yeah, so they could end up trying it out, see if they have success. And then a lot of our sequences, we put in an advanced coursework as a capstone to that sequence. You can get dual credit and AP scores in a lot of ways if you're scoring a 3 or higher on that AP test. And then I'm going to go through just some of the courses that we offer and explain a little bit of the difference. And you can see how they align. So honors courses, honors 1, 2, and then you have AP courses. We offer several of these, and we always adapt it. We always end up building a high school schedule based upon student interest. And then if you look, and in particular, a good example might be honors English 1 and 2. But then when you look over and you talk about transfer dual credit, well, now you can get into an honors English 3. You can get transfer credit versus articulated credit. And the difference between those is that transfer credit is basically earning college credit. And you can go with it. And articulated college credit, this would be for like our advanced manufacturing, so that if you want to end up going in the program, you can end up doing it that way through this. And that's what we do. Relations with that's what we have for you tonight.
Any questions?
So I guess I'll start with yours just because then so for the added sections and other things, how are we working in terms of before we do that, before we have teachers that are going to be required in terms of the AP sections and the ability to teach at that level to meet that? And I guess how is the district helping meet the needs of those teachers being prepared to teach those courses successfully?
So those for the AP courses, the College Board and AP does a really nice job of having that whole guaranteed viable curriculum training. So we just budget for that. It's a significant investment, but we've just made it a priority and we made it work. The same thing for some of these courses, we're on a project way, and we do the exact same thing there. And the next expansion that we're going to be talking about, it has a practical funds, and we're looking at securing the funds for that too. And it has to be sustainable.
And then on the elementary side, question about how I guess the stuff with the ALP aligns with the Purdue and the cluster and the other things we've been doing. I know it seems that it was part of that cluster part, and then also just, I guess, our capacity, because we know limited time, teacher, I mean, sort of bring in this group of team together that you already have for teams that come together for IEPs and other things on the other side, and bringing that together, I guess, do we imagine our sustainability and capacity to do this? Because this sounds, I mean, ALP, I think is wonderful, and I think it's happened in a variety of ways without, I think, this formal thing. I know my children have had, I mean, like, I think those things have always been happening because we have great teachers and people who recognize things, but I think that requires the, the focus of it. So I guess, what is the, I guess, capacity to continue to sustain this model and have
Yeah,
that?
and I think I go back to starting out tier 1. We're building that tier 1 capacity. The more resources we put in place tier 1, that data dynamic, you know, the more kids we can meet their needs
and keep from going tier 3 on intervention, we can put more resources on the other side, right? But I think you said it's our internal capacity that we have. We are doing these things. We've identified it. We're just trying to bring our system together. When I say system from the elementary side, we've got phenomenal things happening. And one of the things we're going to do with the Core Plus More, and just keep in mind, we just piloted this ALP last year. So this was one of a few pilots, and we're going forward this year with the process across the board. But we want to share out what's working. And for example, at the elementary with our system-wide guidance, right now we're working on individual grade level resumes. So we've got the system guidance, and now we're working with individual grade levels. And one of the things we're going to do with Core Plus More is when that winter map benchmark comes, we're going to look at that data and we're going to look at individual classrooms and ask teachers what they're doing to meet kids' needs and really try to keep that, use that data to not only help kids, but help teachers grow. And we're doing things like focusing our PD efforts. We're working to plan PD to help support the small group guided reading, guided math practices. But then also, one of the things Hamilton did really well in our largest elementary is they were able to coordinate those services through the scheduled meet Enzo's needs. And that's something that we will be working with our administrators on, because we have a lot of support, but sometimes that support's fragmented. And it's aligning that support. And that's one of the things, like, for example, our Core Plus More time right now, that's 30 minutes a day. That can complement an ALP plan, and we can get that continuity across the board as we grow and learn.
The majority of our high achieving students are getting that through the Core Plus More time. As Allison said, like with second grade, we have 2 classrooms that are doing that. So that's like our 80 to 98th percentile kids that they're high achieving and they're getting that. They have people like at their level, peers at their level. The ALP process, I think we really have to keep it manageable because, as you said, it's a lot of resources. And so we're really looking at the kids that don't fit with other kids. There's not like a cluster of them that are kind of together. When you looked at his data, he was a lot higher than everybody else. So there wasn't really, he was going to be in isolation a lot. And so there wasn't really people to do that with. So I think that that's where we really have to like be careful, because we can't give 100 ALP. There's no, it's not manageable. So it's really identifying those kids that are that much higher than everybody else. The other thing that you brought up a good point about IEPs and stuff, this team is a team that doesn't normally do IEPs. So that's the nice part about this. Like, our instructional coach is usually not in on IEPs. Our counselor is usually not in on IEPs. So this is kind of a different group of people, which is, is nice. But it is kind of similar to that process. But it's not like we're adding more necessarily to like a psychologist or social worker's plate. It's a different group of people that are working on it. But they went above and beyond for sure. I mean, there was time that, they went above and beyond their contract time on certain things and, volunteered to help out on things for sure. But I think it's just really trying to keep that manageable number of, ALPs, so.
Thank you. And overall, just really exciting to see how we moved in terms of, I guess, our intentionality toward different populations.
If you guys ever want to come watch the Core Plus More, it's been awesome. I mean, it really, like Lisa said, I think we're going to see a lot of growth from it. You guys can reach out. I'd be happy to let you come in and watch a couple grade levels do it, because it's been so fun to see the kids engaged and getting what they need and just all hands on deck. And so I'd be happy to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll move on to the presentation of the 2021 tax levy by Mr. Herman.
Okay, this is my annually fun presentation that we get to talk about taxes. I'm gonna preface it by saying the data in here is very complex, and I can talk about anything you want. However, there's 5 weeks before you take a vote on this. So anything I gloss over, please feel free to call me and set it up. I know many of you have seen it before, so let's go with it. The first thing is we're just going to talk about, what needs to happen for a tax levy. The calendar you have to present it by school code. You have to put it on display until at least 20 days before you approve it. If you go over a certain percentage growth, you have to have a public hearing. We always have a public hearing, but we don't advertise it in the paper if it's not over 5% to save the money. So then this is really the first process of next year's budget. This is the stuff that you've already seen, but it just gives you a representation of our local, our federal, and our state. This is skewed because of ESSER, so it's up there, but typically most of our money comes from the tax levy. 2/3 of it. This is just where we spend our revenues, or where we get our revenues from, and the biggest piece is the property tax. One other thing that is very important, we get all of our property tax, or 50% of our property tax before our kids even start school. So it helps with cash flow. To give you an example, we collected about $45 million last year, and 15 million was collected in the month of June. Good for us. So the levy basics, this is what the district needs. Nobody likes taxes. But in the end, we're a public good, and education needs to be funded through taxation. So you just got to make sure we're getting what we need and what's necessary for the educational process. And how does that come about? Based on the EAV of people's homes and the commercial property. We don't have much farms, so we'll get into that. This is, education rates that are statutorily defined. You can't go above that. So the only one that we significantly go under is transportation. We could tax up to 0.20 or 20 cents is what a lot of people refer to it as, but we only transport special ed. So, you wouldn't go up to 2.0 versus our neighboring districts might have to if they provide both transportation for special ed and regular ed students. If we talk about the levy basics, these are not capped. Tort liability, it's really for your insurance. The biggest piece of that is work comp, and our other premiums associated with insurance, but it also takes into account legal fees if you have any settlements, various information like that. Social Security is based on payroll. Remember, mostly our certified staff do not pay into Social Security, but our non-certified staff do. The same thing with IMRF, that's a non-certified staff. Bond and interest is a quasi-known, and we'll go over that in a chart because it's really what our outstanding debt service is. Here's just a quick chart. I've got a better line graph that shows it, but the good news is we're growing in our EAV for the 5 consecutive years. That's good. It was negative for a while, and that hurts. If you look at this year, the Rock Island County Assessor's Office is estimating it at a growth of 1.7%. That's good. I'm gonna tell you, I thought it would have been higher than that just because we all see how houses move and everything. So I was expecting higher to just generate, rule of thumb, but there's a lot of people that didn't sell their houses. So you might think, yeah, it should be higher, but there's a lot of people that are just assessed on that basis. 2/3 of our people are in the school district are residential, then commercial and a little bit of industrial and other. Here's the growth. That's what you want as an economy, for anything. You want growth on an upward trend. This shows your EAV is increasing as an aggregate. Good chart to see. It's always good when it's going up. This is the percentage change of it every year. You can see sometimes it has been negative. Sometimes it's positive. This time it's positive by 1.7%. The Rock Island County does a very good job at providing accurate estimates, almost to the 99.9 percentile. That's excellent. Makes it easier on my half. So here's if we look at last year's extended levy versus this year's anticipated, if everybody approves the way we have it set up, our growth is only 1.01, 34. So it's growing at about a percent, 1.5% almost. That's well below the statutory level for a levy, for a truth in taxation requirement for a public hearing and advertise. We're gonna still have a public hearing. We're just not gonna advertise it outside of our normal process of the agenda. Look at this is the bond schedule. And this is where I said, how that bond is based on need, but you guys, as you set and we sell bonds and we have debt repayment schedules and we talk about that when we do sell it, we try to keep it in the $3.6 million number. So you're not 1 year taxing more for it to the community and then the next year lowering it. There's nothing worse than owning property and not knowing where your taxes are fluctuating high and low. We try to keep that schedule right in line there. So the other thing I want you to show you is in about 3 years, we need to identify that next project because if not, it'll go way down. And then if you want to increase it the following year, you're going to have, a lot of angry residents. So, 2-3 years, we need to identify our next facility project. We got enough lined up for the next 2 years, and we'll talk about that in my second presentation. So this is big numbers, lot of numbers. In the end, our tax rate was a little over $5.40 last year. It generated about 45 million. This year, with the estimates based on need and everything, we're a little lower. We're gonna be at about $5 and a little more than 1 cent. You know, it generates a little bit more money, about $500 million more money. That's not a little, that's a lot, but it's across all those things. The reason the tax levy is decreasing, a lot to do with is transportation. Don't forget, we levied in 19 for transportation. We weren't even in school for a quarter. Last year, we anticipated to be there for a whole year. We weren't. And even with the residents, even with the driver shortage we have, we're not going to need the transportation levy that we normally have. So the reason for the rate drop is really all that. Everything else is pretty consistent. Here's a history of your tax rate. So if you want to tell those people that your constituents, your tax rate has been going down over time. EAV's been going up, but what we control is the tax rate. So good news is that's probably one of the lowest that we might be in the last 20 years. What does it do on your house? That's what everybody cares about. The rest doesn't matter. Okay, $100,000 house last year with our tax rate, you would have paid $1,680.33. That is only the tax bill associated with Moline Coal Valley School District, not the city, not Rock Island, not the library, not the Metrolink, or any of those other ones that you have. That's what it would have generated. Under this tax rate that's a little lower, you'll see a dollar change, about a negative $8.82. The tax levy is about 0.5% lower, and it's really all associated with it, like we talked about before. Good news is, you know, it's a relatively flat tax rate. I argue that it's lower, but there's a lot of people in here that the $100,000 house is now maybe at 103. They might see a slight increase. So it depends on where you live in the community, what your value is, how the assessor did it. In general, we're saying you're probably pretty neutral. So I flew through all this, but in the end, in good times, you try to be respectful and not tax as much as you have to. This will generate about $500,000, as we talked about. But the reality is we still have needs. Think about your inflation, think about your gas. The overall increase in the CPI from September to September is almost 4%. If you think about Social Security raises that people are talking about, that's an index of about 6%. So, we're not going up much, but we don't need to because we are in good financial condition and we can be respectful for a tax rate. A lot of stuff I just threw at you. You got 5 weeks to either digest it and vote for it, but the bottom line is we're in good shape and the tax levy is a little lower. Questions?
So go on with your Aspire update.
Okay, this one's gonna be a lot slower, folks. Okay, so here's what we got. As promised, we talked about this a month ago. I'm giving you advance. So we talked about this a month ago as part one of many of our different projects, but this one's only about Aspire. All we're going to talk about today is Aspire. I'll be glad to answer any of your other questions, but this one's focused on what do the bids do. If you recall, this is the overall map of the high school. We're only talking about the Aspire wing, pretty much there. The entry is going to be very much there. Give you guys a visual. You're tired of looking at all my numbers, but we'll get there. So if you remember, we shared this exact slide with you a month ago. We originally estimated a $2.8 million budget. The design, the committee worked. I'm going to tell you the design was a little bit more robust than maybe the initial 2.8. And I'll talk about a little of that. We transferred $3 million in June because we knew that number was too low because of what the market was telling us. Bid packages were October 4th. Bid opening was 2 weeks ago. Construction still planned to begin at December 18th, pending what our discussion is going to be tonight. And then they'd be able to be in the new space in August 2022. an aggressive timetable. We knew that going in. Here's the big news. We estimated 2.8. We had a preliminary in June of 3 million-ish. It came in at 3.5. So is that surprising? No, folks. Am I good at what I do? No, folks, I miss it. Is it intentional? No. I think you had a great design committee. They were very robust in what they wanted, and that's all right, because you're taking estimates based on just space and square footage and ideas, but when you get into design, you're really talking about the rooms, the spaces, and everything you need. So that's what our wishes come out to be. So our next step is, what do we do from here? We have some options. This is what we discussed before. We can accept the bids as is. You guys got other questions, and we'll get to it. But we could accept the bid as is. We can delay the project. And anticipation of COVID did add more money to this. What is that? Who knows? Do we still have expenditures that happen? Yes. But it is the wishes of the board, we could do that. Now, we could also reduce the scope, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, and I'm gonna use round numbers, but if we leave and don't touch the locker rooms in the gym, you could have a savings of about $250,000. If you eliminate fire protection, $150,000. That means don't do sprinklers. I'm not suggesting we do any of these. Eliminate school health link, but once you go out for bid, there's not much you can really do and identify if you want me to come in back to you with a proposal that gets you within somewhat of budget. These are the big chunks. We could eliminate some restrooms that we had in there, and I'll go in a little bit. We'll come back to this slide, and I'll give you guys time to process it, because we're gonna need something. But if you look at this picture, this is the don't touch the locker rooms. You see the locker rooms in there, we have cut them in half. We also have put flex space. We have put offices for our the liaison officer. We can find somewhere else to go. You can go in there in the locker room. But these are the things that you would say if we cut that, because there's a lot of cost associated with that. The other thing I might suggest is, when we designed this, we didn't have an intention of harming anybody. In these repurposing of this space into the cafeteria and right here into the office, there was space there that was also used for locker rooms for girls and boys extracurricular activities. So they were mainly for softball, football, baseball, and coaches. So we really had a purpose of, hey, we would really reallocate this to there and that to there, because that flow worked. So if we decided not to do the gym and the locker, we would be adversely harming something. It is what it is. I'm not saying yes, no. I just want us to know we did harm somebody if we go with that option. So the second one I'll show you before I go on there. When we did I'm gonna go back to the overall slide. When we did the Performing Arts Center, this whole wing was given a sprinkler system. And by code, you gotta do a firewall, and if you do massive upgrades, this was considered a massive upgrade. When we did the PE center, the same thing happened because we were at 65,000 square feet. When we're talking about here, we're not talking about that much. So you could have a real reason to say, hey, let's not expend the 150. I'm gonna tell you, from somebody that was directly involved in rebuilding Franklin because of a fire, I'd have a hard time recommending it. We can vote the way we want, but I'm gonna say that would be hard, but I wanted to show you what I was talking about. So everything in here, all the way to the pool, is part of that sprinkler system. Now, if we talk about the school health link, wasn't in our first proposal. You know, initial numbers, we were talking about 150,000. The good news is it really only cost 90,000, but if we cut it, we'll only save 90, not 150. But it's all these rooms so they can access through here. It's a good community event, but it's something we can say, hey, they don't need a whole new I'm gonna have to say wing, but office space and medical rooms. But it's not much of a saving. The other thing is, we repurposed these two bathrooms right here. Folks, the doors on them are 22 inches wide. And there's a boy and a girl. Nobody in a wheelchair can use those. Nobody can use those. They're used now for a lot of the baseball activities and stuff. We have in there about 19,000, I think it is, to renovate those into one handicap accessible. The other one is we were gonna add a handicap accessible out here for that side of the building. Those two combined for almost 50,000. Those are cuts that could be happening if we so choose to go down that line. I'm gonna give you an alternative to cut if we so choose. This is the same slide I showed you a month ago. I feel very comfortable our 1% projects will come in under budget. Now, do I know what that Moline High School HVAC is coming in at now? No, but I know I have $600,000 in there for demo. We won't have to demo. I also talked to you about LED. I know I'm gonna be wrong on that. We're gonna be higher than that, but there's an option. Another option I would say is we can transfer funds. Folks, sometimes I come in here and tell you we're not in a financially good situation. I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you the reverse. We have a lot of challenges in front of us. Right now, it's not financial. It's COVID, it's SEL, you've heard it all. You know it all. So I would say you could transfer for working cash. Because our ed fund is, and we talked a little bit about this before, the ed fund is going up. So the need for the emergency working cash is not there. Generates in the tax levy about 500,000. I think that would be a very good one. That would be my preference. So instead of us doing 3, we did 3.5. We're still in a very good situation for the next 4 or 5 years. Use unallocated 1% balances. Remember 2 years ago, we took a conservative approach and we said, we're only gonna budget $3 million because we didn't know what the proceeds from the 1% were gonna be, and then typically 3.8. But with COVID, we didn't know how that 1% would come back. It came in at 3.8. And we're building a balance with on 1% reserves. Do we have needs? Folks, we have more needs than we can get to, but I'm saying we could repurpose that. The other one is the remaining FY18 bonds. I just went over that. We could repurpose that, if you so choose. Number 7 on the board agenda says, award of bid recommendation, recommended motion, that the Board of Education accepts the recommendation of Russell Construction, Davenport, Iowa, and approve Russell Construction Company to enter into an agreement with the lowest qualified bidder for the Moline High School Aspire package in the amount of blank. My recommendation is take the bids as is. I think it's a great concept. I think through the design committee, identified needs. You have the resources to do that. However, if we choose to do something different, and I think Rachel will tell you she agrees with that motion too. If you decide to do something different, if we're gonna still go on with the Aspire program, instead of halting it and delaying it, I need a motion tonight with a dollar amount in it. So we can get to work December 18th and have kids in there by August. I went through that quick. It made sense in my mind. The bottom line is, we have to identify if we want bids as is, we want to delay the project, or we want to take any of those cuts, or any of the above. Open for discussion.
If taking bids as is adds 500,000 to the budget, what would be the reasonable expectation for the likelihood of more being needed because things, as they go, come in over budget?
Good question. I think with a scope of these projects that are identified in a timeline of really 7 months, there's going to be nothing because they're bid right now. So they will know, and they're trying to get work for the summer. So that's why we went out when we did. And we also have $239,000 in contingency. I have no idea when we break those walls down. However, I feel somewhat comfortable because the HVAC was done and we did some performing arts stuff and we did some PE. But I reluctantly say, I will not come back. Because I hate coming back for this. So I think I answered the question in concept. I feel very comfortable with the award to the lowest bidder. We have kind of capped our costs, except for something wacko and really unforeseen.
And if allocating the extra money needed to meet the bids as is chosen to do, your recommendation as
Working cash,
as the bean counter of the district is.
working cash fund, because I think you have another 1%. We have 1% needs, and I can go list them. But right now, we know CARES is gonna fund hopefully the 6 buildings we identified. We have 4 others, the 2 middle schools, Bicentennial and Roosevelt, we have to get to. And I don't know where that money's coming from, so if you had the wherewithal and that we could get to those projects with the next 1%, if CARES doesn't allow getting it, then you could say to the community that we have, our number 1 goal is air conditioning and provide high quality air flow in all of our buildings as possible.
And you feel out of working cash that doesn't
I'm very comfortable with that.
damage the current position.
The thing about using working cash, and since my existence in the district is, other districts do things different. And that's fine. As long as you're taking working cash for one-time expenditures, I favor anything you want to do. But if you take them to pay for ongoing operational costs, that's structurally going to get you in trouble. That's what the state of Illinois did with the debt obligation for pension. So I would say, don't do that. One-time expenditures, you're okay.
I would say the construction market's not gonna get any looser in the next 4 to 5 years, so I think delay should not be an option. I mean, second of all, I think the Justin question about like more money, they're gonna want, more force account stuff. I just don't see it because of the way contractors are bidding right now. They're not as aggressive, which means they're building it more profitable than they're bidding because they can, so I just don't see that it's gonna be on change orders. In my opinion, my professional. I think it's something we gotta balance, like what we need to do and what we should do, and this is definitely something we need to do. Anybody who's walked in this building can show that this building is not suitable for kids, especially like your most vulnerable kids. So I think we need to go and go hard.
I also think we're not going to see a decrease in costs coming once things settle in. I think these numbers are going to stay pretty high. They might go down a little bit, but to delay the project or take something out of it, I don't think it's worth it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, 4 to 5 years is where you're gonna see maybe it moves up a little bit, but then inflation's gonna catch up. So
Yeah.
Really not seeing the market is what it is.
And this is, it was an option. It wasn't a recommendation, it was an option.
Right.
But all I would also say is, we're not experiencing anything different than any governmental entity out there right now. So I mean, not even non-government as well. Costs are rising significantly. Now, I'm not gonna blame all COVID on this. I'm gonna blame some of it on our design, got a little bit robust, but I don't think it got over the top. We're not talking about a BPAC here. We don't have a river wall.
I think we've kind of talked about delaying the project. You got it right, prices aren't going down. But when we look at, the potential to reduce, you talk about fire protection, obviously we all know where that can go wrong. But also I would bet a substantial amount of money that is going to be a requirement that we're going to have to do at some point anyways. And getting in on it now at price as opposed to 5 to 10 years from now when the cost is going to go up and they're going to say you have to do it. That's going to happen. It's coming. The ADA restrooms, I think that's just a no-brainer.
Past boards have had the conversation about your sprinkler, and we have tried to encompass that in major construction remodels. So we had that last conversation with the Franklin Burn. We didn't have to do that. But we spent some 1% money because we thought it was the right thing to do. Passports. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think I hear consensus. What I know, I'm gonna go draft a memo for you guys to go, and that number is gonna say 3, 5, whatever it is. I'll get the exact number. And we're going as is, and then we'll move forward.
That we're gonna go as is.
I don't want to delay the project at all and absolutely need to keep the fire protection there.
Erin? Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I do. I just want to say that I don't think that this is a project that we should cut from. And we've been saying since the beginning, we wanted to give these kids a better place. So I would like to go forward as planned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. McDermott. All right, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Do we need a break? Take a couple seconds.
Well, it isn't our dark.
Okay, so I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Education for School District number 40 at the Professional Development Room on Monday, November 8th at 7:07, not 8:07, 7:07. Can I have a roll call, please?
Audrey Adamson.
Here.
Justin Anderson.
Present.
Chet DeSmet.
Here.
Kate Schaefer.
Here.
Maria S. Trigueros.
Here.
Andrew Wayers.
Here.
Aaron Waldron Smith.
Here.
Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
To approve the minutes of the open session of the regular meeting from October 25th, so the recommended Board of Education approve the minutes. Regular meeting October 25th, 2021. All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any communication or public comment?
We do not.
Right. Consent agenda. The recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the actions contained in the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Right, do we have any discussion? Now we'll roll call, please.
Justin Anderson.
Aye.
Chet DeSmet.
Aye.
Kate Schaefer.
Aye.
Maria S. Trigueros.
Aye.
Andrew Wayers.
Aye.
Audrey Adamson.
Aye.
Aaron Waldron Smith.
Aye.
Okay, so we need approval of the 2021 estimated levy resolution. So it's a recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the 2021 estimated levy resolution estimate of property taxes for the 2022-2023 school year. We have any discussion? We have a roll call, please.
Chet DeSmet.
Aye.
Kate Schaefer.
Aye.
Maria S. Trigueros.
Aye.
Andrew Wayers.
Aye.
Audrey Adamson.
Aye.
Justin Anderson.
Aye.
Aaron Waldron Smith.
Aye.
Move on to the award bid. And the recommended motion that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of Russell Construction, Davenport, Iowa, and approve Russell Construction Company to enter into an agreement with the lowest qualified bidder for Moline High School Aspire bid package for the amount of $3,535,665 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Have a discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Kate Schaefer,
Aye.
Maria S. Trigueros,
Aye.
Andrew Ware,
Aye.
Audrey Adamson, Justin Anderson,
Abstain.
Chet DeSmet,
Aye.
Aaron Waldron Smith,
Aye.
Okay, so reports for constant open discussion. Dr. Savage?
Okay, annual report card. As the board may be aware, the Illinois Department of Education has released annual performance report cards for school districts around the state. This is the second year where nearly all district performance data, including academic assessments and attendance, is significantly harmed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Ours is no exception. I plan to provide more detail in December, but wanted to make sure that the board was aware of this information. Just a reminder, this Thursday is Veterans Day. The district will be closed on November 11th, and we want to extend our gratitude and appreciation for all veterans that have served in our community. Vaccine clinic. Just a few days ago, we sent a message to all staff and all families advertising our next vaccine clinic. I'm proud to say that this will be our 5th vaccination clinic since the beginning of the pandemic. This clinic was advertised for newly approved youth ages 5 to 11, a booster vaccine for any eligible staff, and a first or second dose for any age eligible student or staff member. We had approximately 200 requests for this clinic, which is now full within a couple of days. I'm grateful to our partners at School HealthLink for sponsoring this clinic for our staff and our families. Community conversation. As you recall, we committed to quarterly community conversations this year. Our next event is virtual and planned for November 16th at noon. Offering some at lunchtime and some in the evenings hopefully allows enough flexibility for those wishing to participate. And I wanted to double check if there was a board member interested in joining me for our next lunchtime event. I can't remember if we had made a decision on that.
I don't think we had. Did we, Erin?
No, we have not yet.
Okay.
Anybody interested or available? How long are they? Typically an hour. So it would be from noon to 1 on next Tuesday. Thank you.
I have a class. I do have lunch at noon, but it's only half hour.
And you can let me know as well if you need to check calendars and things like that.
I'll be in the home, but I can do it if there's anybody else that can.
I can do it too.
Okay.
Will you?
And I think
You can
that would
put
be
a
great.
coin.
I think that would be great. I typically participate from here, but certainly it's remote. So anybody that wants to log on, that would be much appreciated.
I will log in during my lunch hour and then, that's all.
Okay.
That as well, so.
Very good. Historic year for Moline Maroon Athletics. As you may be aware, our Moline Maroons have had a historic fall athletic season. It's been positive and uplifting given all of the sacrifices and challenges brought on by the pandemic for the last 2 years. Our volleyball team conference and regional champs, our football conference champs, cross country, entire girls team qualified for sectionals and 2 individual boys cross country athletes. Girls tennis conference and sectional champs, boys soccer regional champs, girls swimming conference champs, boys golf state qualifier, sectional champ for 1 athlete, girls golf with state qualifier. Overall, we had 4 conference champs out of 9 fall sports and 3 conference players of the year. So I think they took Mr. McDermott's recommendation saying, you know, if we were going to invest these funds in the PE facility, we needed to really start producing some results. So I think they took that to heart. But overall, it's been something very positive, folks expressing a lot of pride and coming together to support our students after they've lost so much. On Thanksgiving break, it's incredibly hard to believe, but Thanksgiving break is just 2 short weeks away, beginning Monday, November 22nd. It seems the weeks are flying by, but I think the upcoming holiday break will be welcomed by all. And lastly, Board of Education Appreciation Day. I wanted to take a moment and thank members of the board for your dedication and service to our school district and our community. Monday, November 15th is Board Member Appreciation Day for the state of Illinois. And now more than ever, your work in supporting students, staff, and families is very much appreciated. So thank you.
Yeah. I just have a couple of things and I'll check with Erin if she has anything. Board norms, obviously, we're gonna push those to the first meeting in December when Erin is able to join us again. Not sure how many of you are planning on going to the conference, but if you are going to the conference in Chicago, make sure that you check with the hotel for anything that you might need. It was brought up at the meeting on Thursday. And I need to call, you know, if you're gonna drive your car, you need to make sure that they have valet parking and all of that stuff, that it's all back in service. So just some thoughts. Resolutions. Audrey's gonna be doing those, so did you wanna?
I was saying, everybody last meeting got your packet, the 2021 resolution study report. Inside of that is the board's recommendation that's then I would take during the voting process that takes place during the convention stuff. So if everyone can complete that and send that, I'll send something out as well, but that way I get everybody's feedback. So that way we're making sure that the board is voting as one voice in those things. So if you haven't had a chance, I don't know if they have these posted on the IASB website or not, but
I think they do.
so they should be down there to get on your packet and then just getting those considered for those resolutions. So if you have any questions, let me know.
And then my last thing is I wanted to say thank you to Rachel, Kristen, and Matt Devane, and Andre for attending the meeting on Thursday for the school board, regional school board. And that the string students did an excellent job of entertaining us while we were eating. It was very nice. They were amazing. Erin, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I would just like to say thank you to the board and staff and Dr. Savage for being patient with me while I have been on this extended recovery, and I'm excited to be back in person in December.
I hope so, because I'm tired of sitting here. Just kidding, just kidding. All right. We need to move on to a closed session to consider the appointment, employment, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district. So I need a motion to do so.
Second.
All in favor?
I had it
Going.
set up, it's set up down in close set and.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Kristen?
Yep, you got the link.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to that link right now.
Okay, so I'm gonna go down there and meeting.
Okay, but do I stay in this meeting too,
But
though,
you
right?
You have to get out of this meeting and then go into the other meeting. And then
Okay.
when that meeting's done, this meeting will still be open. Craig will be here all by himself, waiting for you to get back in.
So lonely.
Okay. All right, I will leave this meeting then.
Yep, okay.
Let me take my
She back in, Craig?
Erin's back.
Yes.
So I need a motion to return to open session. Okay, all in favor?
Hi.
Okay, so I have a recommended motion that the Board of Education accepts the recommendations to hire Keith Carson as the facilities director. Any discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Audrey Adamson,
Aye.
Justin Anderson, Chet DeSmet,
Abstain.
Kate Schaefer,
Aye.
Maria S. Trigueros,
Aye.
Andrew Wayert,
Aye.
Erin Waldron Smith,
Aye.
A motion to adjourn.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
You know how I said I could get the thing? I'm just joking. I can't get the virtual.
Hey, Erin,
I was just- what did I-
there's some stuff for you to sign,
No problem.
right?
Sorry, Audrey.
Aye.